So I've got those three states out of the way.
I'll jump behind.
Yeah, let's get the chairman in the way. Are you ready? All right. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I'm John Macco from the Green Bay area. I'll read some prepared remarks, introduce you to the subcommittee chairs, and then we can take some questions. You should have each gotten a packet with some information. If you didn't, just raise your hand and somebody will hand one out to you. So today we're announcing a restructure of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. We're adding 4 new members to the committee and establishing 4 subcommittees. As far as I can tell, it'll be the first committee ever to have a subcommittee structure. The committee will be charged with researching our tax code and developing a better, low, fair, and simple plan. I first of all want to thank Speaker Voss for his leadership on this, as well as his trust in our team to execute in transitioning a very important policy conversation from 6 months and every 2 years conversation to an ongoing, comprehensive discussion. This is an exciting time for our state. Our unemployment rate is at a historic low. Our budgets are balanced. We're paying our bills on time. Our schools are thriving, and debt is as low as it's been in years. But our tax code, the underlying structure that supports the work of the state, has not kept up with the 21st century, is not working for everyone, and is unfair, unbalanced, and burdensome. Today, with this announcement, we begin to establish an ongoing, intentional dialogue as to what sound tax policy should look like. Today, we begin to set our sights on big ideas that move Wisconsin to a new era of economic growth. I believe that if we're willing to do the heavy lifting and dedicated enough to have the full conversation, to be impervious to special interests, and to focus on the right way to provide for all Wisconsinites, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can provide for the needs of those in need, the education of our kids, the quality of our highways, the work of our cities, counties, and the struggles of moms and dads working hard every day to move their families forward. But it's a big undertaking, and it's best handled by dividing the workload. So 4 subcommittees have been charged with this task. They are the Subcommittee on Sales and Use Tax, chaired by Representative Peterson, the Subcommittee on Personal and Corporate Income Tax, chaired by Representative Culp, the Subcommittee on Local Government Taxation and Funding, chaired by Representative Stephan, and the Subcommittee on Excise Taxes and Fees, chaired by Representative Zimmerman. We're all asking ourselves, what would a revenue-neutral tax code look like if we created it on purpose? In our tax code, it's fascinating. Now, I brought the groceries along, but I forgot them up in my office. But it's amazing because raisins are tax exempt and yogurt is tax exempt, but yogurt covered raisins are taxable. And roasted nuts are tax exempt and honey is tax exempt, but honey roasted nuts are taxable. And we can't even agree on what candy is. A Twix candy bar is taxable, and yet M&Ms are tax exempt. Other way around. Yeah. Twix candy bar is tax exempt, and M&Ms are. That's how confusing it is. And the tip of the tax iceberg is literally ice. We have an entire page in the state codes on how to tax ice in the state of Wisconsin. Now, these anecdotes may seem funny, and they're an example of how difficult it is for taxpayers to navigate and comply with our tax code, and why it costs taxpayers millions of dollars. But the same anomalies permeate our personal and corporate income taxes, our gas and excise taxes, our 911 fees, and most assuredly, as the mayor will tell you, our local funding structures. The Assembly Ways and Means Committee will examine each part of this tax code and present a plan to the legislature that will make our tax code fair, low, and easy. I'd like now to bring up our subcommittee heads to discuss their specific committees that they'll be and what they'll be working on in the next few months. Representative Peterson.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Representative Peterson, and I'd first like to thank Chairman Macco for nominating me and then the Speaker for appointing me to be the chair of the subcommittee on sales and use tax. If you look at sales and use tax in the state of Wisconsin, we have $5 billion in collections and $6 billion in exemptions. So what this committee is going to be doing is it's going to be looking at what is exempt, what is taxed, how are they done, and how is it uniformly collected throughout the state. But I also believe one of the most important parts of this committee is not only to look at what our tax framework is, but what is the cost of the compliance? Is there a tax out there we're collecting $10,000 in tax, but it's costing local businesses $200,000 a year to collect that? So we're looking forward on the committee, looking into all that, and I'll now turn it to the next chair.
Thank you. Representative Culp.
Thank you, and I would also like to join Representative Peterson in thanking Chairman Macco and the Speaker for appointing me to this. I'm Bob Culp. I represent the 69th Assembly District right in the middle of the state. And the mission in the subcommittee that I'm honored to chair is to examine the cash flow of the state of Wisconsin from the personal and corporate income taxes and to determine the efficacy of the current structure and recommend changes to the committee at large. Many of us would agree that our tax system is chaotic and confusing, and that this chaos and confusion protects special interests and hurts the common taxpayer. That, along with the high compliance costs that were mentioned, to figure out that complexity is why I think this is an important discussion to have. Now, tax reform has been an issue since well before I was elected, and likely any of the rest of us that are up here. There's been a lot of work done on the subject in the past, and it's our goal to build on that work and to bring something to the committee that will be good for taxpayers and positive for state revenues. And I believe that's possible. I know it's possible, and that will be our goal.
Thank you, Bob. Representative Stephan, please.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Representative David Stephan, represent the 4th Assembly District just outside of Green Bay. I'll be chairing a committee that touches on an issue that's incredibly important to me, local taxation. Before being a state elected official, I was a local elected official for 8 years in the village of Howard, and also a Brown County supervisor for 3 years. And so with my understanding and awareness of the role and importance of our municipal and county governments in effectively providing services to our residents, unlocking economic development potential within our communities, it's incredibly important that the interaction and integration of the state with our municipal partners, with our county partners, is fully realized. And so it's my goal, with the help of Chairman Macco, my fellow co-chairs, as well as various stakeholders, is to find new ways, innovative ways, to provide that integrated service, integrated taxation system that involves locals, counties, and the state to provide a higher and better level of service for the people we all represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And then Representative Zimmerman.
Perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Shannon Zimmerman. I'm a state representative for District 30. That includes the Hudson, Wisconsin area, River Falls, high growth area, certainly within the state as well. My background, I've been an entrepreneur and grown business for over 21 years. So I certainly have an intimate knowledge of the implications of tax holistically on business, and as well, certainly what it can have on the residents of the state of Wisconsin. You know, in my opinion, at a broad level, this is the time that we take up this topic. It's timely because of the points that were made earlier, the position that the state is in right now. My focus will be on the area of excise tax and fees, and this is also an area more specifically that I have intimate knowledge. As a winery owner in the state of Wisconsin, I know firsthand the complexities, and you've heard a couple themes here. You've heard about simplicity, and you've heard about the removal of special interests. Those are two key guiding principles that all of us will take going forward as we implement reform and work to improve the tax code for the state of Wisconsin. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll take questions. Anybody have any questions?
Will these changes result in Wisconsin taxpayers being able to file on a postcard, as is proposed by Speaker Ryan at the federal level?
Sure. That's a great question, and we're going to go through a 12-month study here to see what we can do. But if we could simplify it to that level, that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
Are you looking at a flat tax? I know it was proposed in Representative Goinga's transportation and tax plan, shy of 4%. Are you going to take those elements out look at those seriously and move the flat tax idea along?
We've been working on this for almost 3 years now. I actually first consulted with Speaker Ryan when he was budget chair. So this goes back a long, long ways, and we've done a lot of due diligence on it. I serve on the executive council for the SALT task force for the NCSL group nationally. We have another conference coming up here. So I've been able to sit down and look at what works in some states and what doesn't. We want to try and emulate what works in some states and avoid the problems of execution and in rates that other states have had. I don't know what we're going to find in our income tax structure. Something needs to be found, but I'm excited about having the entire conversation. We've done a lot of, and when I say we've done a lot of due diligence, I want you to know that we've got some amazing resources here in the state of Wisconsin. Bob Lang is one of them. And so I would bounce some of these ideas, and he'd say, well, you know what? Senator Leon wanted to do something like that in 1997. So guess what? We tracked him down, and I don't remember if he was in Boca or Phoenix or somewhere. I tracked him down in his winter home, and he's like shocked to hear from me because I wanted to talk about a bill that he proposed under Tommy Thompson back in 1997. And so we had some conversations to understand why that did or didn't work. We came up with another idea, and Bob says, you know who tried that? I think Speaker Jensen wanted to do that in 2004, so track him down, track that information down, and start to do all the analysis that goes along with that. And in every single case, what we've never been able to do is have the whole conversation. So when we have the whole conversation, we realize that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Keep in mind, I want you to key on the concept that we're talking about a revenue neutral policy here. We are a Ways and Means Committee. We are charged with coming up with the ways and means of funding the $38 billion that it takes to run the state of Wisconsin. Do we have opinions on appropriations and spending? You bet we do, but it's not germane to this conversation. So our objective is to try and figure out what those numbers look like. If I can just read this is an interesting point. Simply looking at the level of taxation does not tell the full story. How tax systems extract revenue is extremely important. Certain types of taxes, particularly income taxes, can adversely affect the growth of a state and its people. So we will be looking at how that efficiently runs. One side note for those of you that don't know my history. So one of the companies that we founded develops portfolios. So let's say I'm managing your retirement accounts. You want to have what's called an efficient frontier. You don't want to have just cash investments or just stocks. You want to have the right ratios of all of those things. The same thing holds true when we look at some of the charts that we have here. If you look at the chart on my right, you'll see that income tax has gone up exponentially over the time period. Sales tax has gone up too substantially. But look at the gap difference, even on a percentage basis from sales versus income from when we start way out here. It's absolutely staggering. And so those things have negative economic impacts on the state of Wisconsin, and we'll want to make sure that we're putting together a portfolio of revenue sources for the state to provide all of the needs that the state of Wisconsin needs without distorting those economic principles.
Are you looking to apply the state sales tax to more services?
We're going to look at, we're doing a deep dive on everything. So as Representative Peterson said, we have $5 billion worth of sales tax that's generated $6 billion worth of sales tax exemptions. We would want to take a look at those and first of all define what an exemption is. And let's make sure we understand that exemptions are spending. Let's make no bones about that. An exemption is spending. So if we're exempting something, there may be a very good legitimate reason for that. But we need to have that conversation.
Are you seeking to reduce the state's reliance on the income tax then as a revenue stream? Is that part of the
when we look at the two things that are disproportionate and that are causing negative effect on our economy, it's income tax and property tax. So those two things are out of whack right now. I don't know what that will look like, but I can tell you from a purely economic standpoint, those two are dragging us down.
Congress is currently trying to do a tax overhaul. What happens to Wisconsin if they don't review their tax code and Congress changes things?
Right. Great question. Now, I happen to think we ought to do this whether Congress acts or not. But if they do act, then it becomes critical that we do this. Because if they eliminate the SALT deductions, what ends up happening is, I'm going to use this term, but the real and nominal rates become the same. So in other words, the federal government has been carrying high tax states. I think if you talk to my friends in South Dakota or Tennessee that have no income tax, they don't care if we eliminate the SALT deductions because they don't have them to begin with. But we do, and we've used that as a crutch for the longest time because we can take that 7.6% rate of return and with those deductions bring it down to a real rate of about 5.8. When those two things, when that real rate is no longer 5.8 and it's really 7.6, when the real and nominal rate become the same, then we've got a problem. So I think we have an impetus. And here's the thing that I would say, Gwen, is this goes to what I mentioned. We can have our cake and eat it too. I think the people of the state of Wisconsin ought to have a good, solid federal policy that's simple, easy, and fair. But I also think they should have one on the state level. And if both Congress and our legislature do that, I think the citizens benefit tremendously. But even if Congress doesn't act, I think we can still lead on that.
Does the governor and the Senate leadership share this appetite for a comprehensive tax reform package, or is this strictly an assembly discussion that's happening right now?
Yep, great conversation. So we attempted to put together, we looked at multiple ways as to way we might do this, the way we might address this conversation. So we've had conversations with the governor's office. We've had conversation with the majority leader and his team. Senator Markline heads up the tax committee on their side of the aisle, and we felt this is exactly what we need to do. Not create another blue ribbon task force or any kind of special committee, but to strengthen our committee to then work collaboratively with Mr. Markline's committee and come up with something that we can, maybe interject a year from now. We'll see.
So but have the governor and the Senate communicated any appetite for such a sweeping task to try to address that in the next budget? Or?
I didn't ask him directly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It seems that there is no timeline here, that this is
right.
an announcement simply on the restructuring of ways and means. I think the sense is that eventually you're going to get to reform legislation or what have you. Can you give us a sense of when you would like to bring about change to the tax code?
Sure. That's a great question, and I would tell you this, that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So I want to take whatever time it takes to make sure that we do a deep dive into it. And again, we sit and you can't have a personal, you see what happens when we have a personal property tax conversation but we don't have a sales tax conversation, or we don't have a sales tax conversation but we don't have a use tax conversation. We don't talk about 911 fees and shared revenue. And so until you have that entire conversation, you end up with business as usual. So I may be naive, but I think we can do both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I made round one.